You will hear this story from Guards Lieutenant Alexander Mikhailovich Fadin. He went through the war as a tankman, commanding a crew in the 22nd Guards Tank Brigade of the 5th Guards Stalingrad Tank Corps. Participant in the Battle of Kursk, the liberation of Kyiv, and the winter campaign of 1943-1944 in Ukraine. Nominated for the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, awarded military orders and medals. I was born on October 10, 1924, in the village of Knyazevka, Arzamas district, Nizhny Novgorod region. My childhood was spent in an ordinary peasant family, and my youth caught me already in Gorky, where I studied at a river school. On Sunday, June 22, 1941, I woke up late, around 10 in the morning. After having black bread and tea for breakfast, I set off to visit my aunt. When I arrived, I found her in tears. She told me that the war had begun, and her husband Pavel had gone to the military enlistment office to volunteer. This news turned everything inside out. I quickly said goodbye and went back to the school. Already on the tram, conversations were only about the war. People reassured themselves that it would end quickly, comparing Hitler's attack on the Soviet Union to a pug yapping at an elephant. Back then, I had no idea what price we would have to pay to prove otherwise. Just 2 days after the war began, on June 24th, I went to the military enlistment office. The square in front of the building was overflowing with people. Everyone was eager to go to the front. By some miracle, I managed to push my way into the corridor. The political commissar asked why I had come. I answered directly. I wanted to go to the front. Learning that I was only 17, he advised me to continue my studies, saying that there would be enough war for me later, and for now there were others. But the thought of the front never left me. A month later, I returned to the military enlistment office. This time, following a comrade's advice, I added 2 years to my age. I received a medical card, passed the commission, and was enrolled in the 2nd Gorky Automobile and Motorcycle School. Thus began my path into the Army, a path I chose for myself, even if it meant resorting to deception. After enlistment, we were sent to Alino. There it was announced that we were part of the 9th Company of the 3rd Motorcycle Battalion. The very next day, classes began, studying regulations, drill training, songs, marching. There were no real weapons yet. Everyone made their own rifle from a board. On August 7, 1941, we took the oath. Before that, we were bathed for the first time and issued summer uniforms. Soon we received real weapons. We learned to drive AM600 motorcycles with sidecars, IZH-9s, and then new M72s. For those who had never even ridden a bicycle, it was necessary to first master a 2-wheeled horse, and only then, a motorcycle. That winter was harsh. Frosts reached 42 to 45 degrees. The classrooms were almost as cold as outside. We sat motionless, listening to classes, dressed only in cotton uniforms, greatcoats, and mittens. The food situation was even worse. The road was snowed in, and no supplies were coming in. Instead of the prescribed 700 grams of bread per day, we received 2 rusks, a few pieces of sugar, and a bowl of beetroot soup. But we did not despair, believing that these were temporary difficulties. When the enemy approached Moscow, the entire school wrote a letter to Stalin, asking to be sent to the front. 2 days later, a reply came. He thanked them for their readiness, but demanded that they continue their studies, because the motherland would need them later. We understood one thing: Moscow would not be surrendered, and indeed a counteroffensive began. In the spring of 1942, we completed the driver's course, and in the summer, we did practical training in Moscow. But in August, the school was renamed the 2nd Gorky Tank School. The young ones rejoiced, while the frontline veterans with experience said, "You'll burn in those iron boxes." That's how I went from being a cadet driver to a future tankman. In the spring of 1943, a state commission arrived at the school to administer exams. The most important were fire training and knowledge of materiel. Passing them with a good could earn one the rank of junior lieutenant, and with an excellent, a lieutenant. I passed materiel brilliantly, and the main exam, shooting, remained. According to regulations, one was supposed to shoot from short halts, and the grade depended on the speed of aiming and accuracy. But even during training, I decided to shoot on the move, which a frontline battalion commander had taught me. When I hit the target for the first time, my comrades looked with distrust, but an experienced major supported me and said, "This is how you should learn." At the exam, I also shot on the move. The colonel warned that in case of a miss, I would remain a senior sergeant. But I took the risk. 3 shots, 3 hits. The examiner shook my hand and gave me his watch. Thus, on April 25, 1943, I received the rank of lieutenant. Soon we were sent to a reserve tank regiment at plant number 112. My first crew consisted of the experienced driver-mechanic Vasily Dubovitsky, gun commander Golubenko, and radio operator Voznyuk. In May, we received new T-34s, practiced a march with live firing, and soon boarded a train. In early summer of 1943, we arrived in the Kursk region and joined the 22nd Guards Tank Brigade of the 5th Guards Stalingrad Corps. Thus began my combat path at the front. On July 14, 1943, after a regrouping in the battalion, I became a T-34 tank commander. The very next day, we went on the offensive. Red flares soared, and after a few hundred meters, German tanks appeared. Both sides opened fire, and salvos of Katyushas flew over our heads, enveloping the enemy in smoke and dust. A real meat grinder began. In the first hours of the battle, I was gripped by excitement. To catch a tank in the sights and hit it. Only in the afternoon did I manage to disable a 4-wheeler, which caught fire immediately after being hit. A little later, I destroyed an armored personnel carrier. But the main thing was not to break the company's battle formation and move forward with the others. By evening, the Germans began to retreat, and we captured the village of Chepevo. Out of 65 of our tanks, only 18 remained in the brigade. On July 16th, my tank took 2 direct hits and caught fire. We managed to escape and hide in the sunflowers. A little later, returning to our lines, we almost mistook German vehicles for our own. The crosses on the armor stopped us in time. Soon I met the battalion chief of staff, who said, "Well done, Lieutenant. I've already nominated you for the rank of guardsman." But in the Corps, this rank was only awarded to those who proved they knew how to fight. Out of 62 graduates of the academy who arrived with me, only 7 remained after 4 days of fighting. By autumn 1944, only 2 of us were left. These first days on the Kursk Bulge became a harsh baptism of fire for me. After the Battle of Kursk, I was appointed liaison officer for the brigade staff. In this position, I fought for several months, learning to work with maps, understanding the tasks of the company, battalion, and even the brigade. This was a tremendous school for me. In October, I was tasked with taking over the tank of the deceased Guards Lieutenant Polyansky. The crew met me with caution. Everyone was older than me, except for Golubenko, who was my age. I immediately understood. Either I would become their commander from day one, or I would lose authority forever. Toughness and confidence helped me earn respect. Gradually, the crew believed in me, and we became a true combat unit. In early November 1943, we were preparing for the assault on Kyiv. Before the battle, the enemy shelled our field kitchen, but there were no serious losses. On the morning of November 3rd, we launched an attack. Ahead, smoke, flashes of explosions, the earth shaking. We overcame trenches, crushed trees, fired at infantry and strong points. In the forest, our tank was hit and lost a track, but we managed to repair it right under fire while other units continued the battle. On November 4th, the Germans launched a counterattack with tanks, including Tigers. In a night battle, we managed to disable several vehicles and halt their advance. I personally destroyed 2 tanks in a row, firing from 50 meters. It was a risky but successful maneuver. On November 5th, the decisive offensive began. We stormed into the city, advancing street by street. Near Khreshchatyk, I destroyed a German self-propelled gun, and our battalion reached the center. Kyiv was captured. However, my tank was severely damaged. The engine and final drive were out of order. Repair crews declared it unfit for the front until the following year. Thus ended the battles for Kyiv for me. Exhausting, brutal, but victorious. For these battles, the command nominated me and 6 other commanders for the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. After the battles for Kyiv, I was allowed to form a new crew myself. Many asked to join me, and that was the best evaluation of my command. Only the driver mechanic remained in the crew. The others were new appointments. The radio operator was a young fellow Kleshchevoy. The turret gunner was an Evink senior sergeant, and Pyotr Turin became the driver mechanic. On December 27, 1943, the brigade received orders to advance on Chekovichi, Guta Dobrinskaya, and Kameny Brod. For the first time, I was entrusted with leading the advance patrol. We moved at night across fields at high speed. Turin, my mechanic, was nervous, and at one point declared that he couldn't see in the dark. I realized his nerves had given out. I had to sternly order him to drive the vehicle. In the end, he managed and we moved on. At dawn, the village of Kameny Brod appeared. Suddenly, German tanks, Tigers and Panthers, about 20 vehicles, emerged ahead. I made a crazy decision to attack them practically alone. We were lucky. The enemy's first shot changed trajectory, catching on a plowshare in the ground, and flew past. We managed to knock out one Tiger and several other vehicles, but lost many of our own. 8 of our tanks perished in this battle. I saw inexperienced crews die, launching frontal attacks instead of hiding behind houses and striking the flank. Despite the losses, we managed to hold back the enemy. In the battle at Kameny Brod, my crew destroyed a Tiger and several German tanks, but I clearly understood the price of every victory. In early January 1944, we participated in the liberation of Tarasha. Here I had the opportunity to fight against a German Ferdinand self-propelled gun. We went for a ramming attack, and our T-34 literally crushed it. In the same battle, I blew up a truck with German soldiers on a bridge. A cannon salvo turned it into a fiery fireworks display. There were also strange episodes. When I had a German tank in my sights almost at point-blank range, the turret of my T-34 suddenly jammed because of a piece of tarpaulin caught in the mechanism. This saved my life. The tank retreated, and I later realized that God had protected me for the 4th time. On the night of January 4th, 2005, we completely liberated Tarasha. These days remained in my memory as the most exhausting. Battles, grueling marches, rare moments of sleep, constant risk. But we moved forward without stopping. After the liberation of Kyiv and the battles for Tarasha, we had to continue the offensive without rest. In late December and the first days of January 1944, we marched day and night, almost without sleep or food, pushing forward. In the Skvira region, we encountered German rear echelons, a huge column of wagons and vehicles, snow, white fields, and a black strip of people, horses, and carts moving along the road. These were the rear elements of the enemy's 88th Infantry Division. We struck suddenly, fanning out across the width of the column, firing on the move. The Germans panicked, abandoned their carts, and tried to escape into the fields. The residents of the village of Berezanka ran into the streets, interfering with our aimed fire, and we had to shoot over their heads. The scene was terrible. Corpses of soldiers, overturned carts, smashed guns. We captured hundreds of prisoners, and the trophies became an unexpected boon. Meat, clothing, even new boots that I wore for a long time. Then our column moved on. Approaching Tarasha, we received a warning from a woman. An ambush lay ahead, and indeed a German Ferdinand stood at the crossroads. My tank launched a frontal attack. An armor-piercing shell struck its front, and then mechanic Tyran rammed the vehicle. The Germans tried to jump out, but they were cut down by machine gun fire. Next came street fighting. The Germans left strong rear guards in the town. At night, the streets were lit by the moon. Silence pressed down, but every minute could turn into a sudden shot. We acted cautiously, but still lost men. Several of our tanks burned down in literally neighboring blocks. In one battle, I nearly missed the chance to destroy a German tank. The turret of my T-34 jammed with a piece of tarpaulin that the scouts had stretched on the stern, and I couldn't fire at point-blank range. At the time, I thought it was an accident, but later I realized that fate had saved me from death more than once. By the morning of January 5th, we had finally driven the enemy out of Tarasha. The town was liberated, but there was almost no joy. Exhaustion, loss of comrades, desolation. We understood that new battles lay ahead, and there would be no time for respite. After Tarasha, we moved on. Our battles turned into a continuous march. In early January, near Lisaya Gora, my tank was hit again. The left final drive was shattered, and the vehicle could only fire upwards. My crew and I organized a circular defense. We removed machine guns, prepared grenades, and submachine guns. A squad of infantry joined us. When the Germans tried to attack us with a group of up to 20 men in the morning, we opened heavy fire. Half the enemy were laid down immediately, the rest retreated, carrying their dead. Only after a few days did the repair brigade restore the tank. On January 9th, I was tasked with taking command of a half company of tanks that had been repaired and leading them into battle for a village near Vinograd. We successfully completed the task, but by January 17th, the brigade was withdrawn to the reserve for replenishment. During these days, the price of war was particularly felt. New crews arriving from the rear often perished in the first battles, while those who survived became the core of the units. During the replenishment, I was appointed commander of the battalion commander's tank. The crew included experienced tankmen, decorated with orders and medals for Stalingrad and other battles. These were men older than me, accustomed to keeping to themselves. I had to prove my right to command them. On January 24, 1944, the brigade was again committed to a breakthrough in the direction of Vinograd. We advanced at dawn, rolling across a field strewn with the bodies of our soldiers who had fallen in infantry attacks. It was hard to see this. It was no longer 1941, but command errors still cost hundreds of lives. We crawled across the plowed field, bypassing the bodies, and only then sharply increased speed, burst into the town, and took it with a swift strike. On the morning of January 26th, my crew was placed at the disposal of Brigade Commander Zhilin, who had lost his tank. Thus, I became the commander of the vehicle on which the commander of the 22nd Tank Brigade himself fought. This January hardened me completely. I was no longer a young, inexperienced lieutenant, but was becoming a commander entrusted with the most responsible tasks. In late January 1944, after Vinograd, I found myself in the tank crew of the commander of the 22nd Guards Tank Brigade. This was a special honor and at the same time a huge challenge. My crew now consisted of men who had been through heavy battles, awarded orders and medals, experienced and mature fighters. The driver mechanic was Guard Senior Sergeant Pyotr Doroshenko, with the orders of the Patriotic War and the Red Star gleaming on his chest. The gun commander, Fedosov, had 2 medals for courage. Radio operator Yelsukov was also decorated with orders. All 3 had medals for the defense of Stalingrad, a rarity even by 1944. When I first entered the house where they lived separately from the others, the meeting was wary. It wasn't easy for them to accept a young lieutenant, not yet 20, as their superior. I understood this and knew I would have to prove my right to command such a crew, not with words but with deeds. Already on January 24th, the brigade was committed to a new breakthrough. We advanced at dawn behind the rifle chains, attacking German positions. The entire field was covered with the bodies of our soldiers who had fallen in previous attacks. We, the tankmen, literally drove between the bodies, bypassing them so as not to crush them with our tracks. The picture was terrible and humiliating. In 41, we had no shells, and now in 44, we had everything, and yet mistakes still cost lives. After breaking through the first line of defense, we sharply increased speed, burst into the town of Vinograd, and took it with a swift strike. The offensive continued. In January, my tank was finally assigned to the brigade commander. I felt that I was moving to a new level of responsibility. Now every step I took was under close scrutiny, not only by the enemy, but by my own men as well. I had to not just fight, but also lead. Spring 1944 in Ukraine brought new challenges, but it was this period that became a turning point in my service. From a young cadet who had experienced hunger and cold at the academy, I transformed into a combat officer, trusted by experienced frontline soldiers and the brigade command.